Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener. I am Cody Diener, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer with TNA Wrestling. I'm a professional speaker traveling all across the nation, telling my story to youth and the lessons that I've learned along the way. I'm a proud father to 4 children, and I am a proud husband to 1 beautiful wife. Welcome back to the show. This is my podcast. If I'm not welcoming you back, I'm welcoming you here for the first time. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with David Penzer. This is part 1 with David Penzer. If you're not familiar with that name, you might be familiar with his voice. If you're an old school wrestling fan that watched WCW for many years, well, the ring announcer announcing all the legends from Ric Flair to Hulk Hogan to Goldberg during the Monday Night Wars. Well, the person announcing those guys, bringing them down to the ring, both on Nitros and pay-per-views, was today's guest, David Penzer. David Penzer recently wrote a book called Sitting Ringside Volume 1. He did it with Guy Evans, the same guy who did the Nitro book, which is an amazing book, by the way. I've read it, and it's super insightful as to why WCW actually failed in the history of that company. If you're a wrestling historian, if you're someone like me who just gobbles up any type of wrestling book, go check out the work by Guy Evans. He also did the Grateful book recently with Eric Bischoff, and now he has done volume 1 of Sitting Ringside with David Penzer. So today we will be talking all about that book, but we won't just be going through kind of the history of the book and why he wrote it. We're going to be pulling out life lessons along the way. Why? Because this is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. Now, if you enjoy the show and you'd like to support the show, please help support me to keep bringing the show to you for free each and every week. One way you can support is simply by taking a screenshot right now and posting on your social media and tag me at Cody Diener. Tell me what you think of the show. Also, wherever you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, if you are watching on YouTube at Cody Diener Podcast, why don't you leave a comment? Why don't you smash that subscribe button? And if you're listening to this driving down the road to work somewhere, well, why don't you pull over at the side of the road? Or once you get to work, you know what? Never mind. Don't pull over on the side of the road. That's ridiculous. Just wait to get to where you're going. Once you get there, why don't you hit the download button or the subscribe button or the follow button, whatever it is on your podcast platform of choice, and just so you can get this downloaded each and every week onto your device. That's one way to support. Another way to support is to go to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Diener, get yourself a t-shirt, or go to cameo.com/Cody Diener, get yourself a personalized video, or better yet, why don't you become a patron? Head on over to patreon.com/Cody Diener, sign up for a free trial, and if you do that, you will get every single week's guest early and ad-free. No intros, no outros, no commercials. You'll get it early. Every single guest, the full conversation, as well as a bonus story. And we got some doozies of the bonus stories, including a bonus story from last week's guests. I had on the Rest When Dead Skeleton Crew. I had Jake Something, Jody Threat, and Crazy Steve. And there's 2 bonus stories, and one of those bonus stories is amazing from our buddy Crazy Steve. Speaking of Rest When Dead and the Skeleton Crew, you can support me by supporting our sponsors, which includes Rest When Dead clothing. Go to restwhendead.ca to shop the entire collection of world-renowned fitness apparel. And you can also go to ceofit.ca to get supplements, top-of-the-line supplements from all around the world delivered to your door for free or super cheap, depending on the size of your order. Where's that? ceofit.ca, and your fitness apparel clothing at restwhendead.ca. I've been busy, guys. I've been traveling up and down the roads, not just with TNA, but with various independent promotions. I will tell you more about my busy schedule if you hang around at the end of the show, and I'll be letting you know how you can book me for your event and where you can see me upcoming soon. But let's jump into today's guest. Yes, you're here for some David Penzer. Like I said, You might not be familiar with that name, but this guy has rubbed shoulders with legends. Like I said, like a Ric Flair, a Randy Savage, a Hulk Hogan, basically every Roddy Piper, who will be coming up in this conversation. He comes up. We have a mutual scenario, a mutual connection actually to Roddy Piper. So be listening for that over the next few weeks. It's really, really cool. But anyways, he's rubbed shoulders with like my heroes, this guy. And he's got some insightful things to say about those heroes and the things that he's learned getting into the wrestling business. Now, I really wanted to talk to David Penzer, not just because I wanted to support him and promote his book, but I have so many people that ask me how they can get involved in professional wrestling. And a lot of people that ask me that are not people that want to get into the ring, but they want to get involved in the business somehow because they love it so much. Well, we're going to get some answers to that question today with David Penzer. I have not had a ring announcer on the show yet. I've had wrestlers, I've had referees, I've had backstage producers, but I have yet to have someone who announces people down to the ring and has rubbed shoulders with the legends that today's guest has rubbed shoulders with. So I think you're going to enjoy this week and next week, part 1 and part 2 with David Penzer, infamous WCW ring announcer, as well as a ring announcer with Impact Wrestling. That's when I got to know David. We would hop in the car to head to the venue oftentimes, and I didn't realize when I was hopping in the car with David Penzer that I was following in the footsteps of other guys that he rode down the road with. Guys like an Arn Anderson or a Kevin Sullivan. I mean, this guy's just got story after story of these legends and things that he's learned from them. You can read it in his book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. Just go to davidpenzerbook.com, davidpenzerbook.com. I'll put that in the show notes, and you can check out this book that isn't just an autobiography. It wasn't even supposed to be an autobiography. It was supposed to be a scrapbook, because he has all the show formats that he kept from back in the day with WCW, as well as some cool ad reads, as well as internal office memos. Like, man, if you are a diehard wrestling historian, you're going to love the David Penzer book. So go to davidpenzerbook.com. So without further ado, let's not talk about the book anymore. Let's talk directly to the man himself, David Penzer. So let's listen to part 1 with my friend and soon to be yours, the one and only David Penzer. All right. I'm here with David Penzer, the legendary David Penzer. How's it going, Penzer?
That's not necessarily legendary, but it's going great. Thank you for having me. That's
ridiculous. I just put you over for like 5 minutes on the intro to this podcast, Penzer. You didn't get to hear it, but you have to go back and listen. I put you over. If you're not willing to accept the term legend, I mean, we can at least say that you've been side by side, sitting ringside with legends for many, many years.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be blessed for sure. Yeah, what an honor that is.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk to you for a number of reasons. Maybe before we jump into the book stuff, which is I'm excited about to talk to you about, but the other thing I'll start a little bit more personal. This is Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. So we're going to be talking about all things wrestling and all things kind of related to life, but let's start with the life thing. When you were in TNA / Impact Penzer, we got to ride down the roads together, hopping in cars with usually the Motor City Machine Guns, and we'd go to and from the building together. And that's kind of where I got to know you a little bit more and kind of as a person and learn a little bit more about your career. So that's one thing I'm excited about having you on the podcast. If people are wondering, what does David Penzer and Cody Diener have anything in common about? Well, we got to ride down the roads a little bit together, which I always really appreciated and liked.
Yeah, I miss that. I don't miss the travel, and I don't miss Josh Matthews. But just kidding. Just kidding, Josh. Calm down. But I miss us in the Machines and whoever else would jump in and out, Big Con, chatting, telling stories and stuff. That's how we used to kill time, driving 2 hours, or 3 hours to the next town. Fortunately, we were just driving 20, 30 minutes to the building from Bell, but it was still great to be able to get to know different people. And I'm going to talk more about that in volume 2, but coming out in October of this year. But volume 1, as you know, is mostly about the WCW. But yeah, I missed the times hanging out. I hope everything's going good over there. It sounds like it is.
Yeah, man, it's going well, dude. And like you said, missing riding down the roads, which is one of the things that it was a good transition into talking about your book, because it's one of the things that you really comes across in volume 1, Sitting Ringside, by David Penzer. You talk very positively and glowingly about that aspect of the business, riding down the roads. And even though you say you won't miss the travel, and yeah, the travel sucks, it's tough, it's probably the tougher part of the job. However, when you get to do it with your friends, riding down the road as one of the boys, I mean, that's something that you really end up cherishing as a part of your life. And that comes across in the book, Penzer, that's something that you really cherish a lot. Is that a safe thing for me to say that is something that you look back on fondly, is the travel with the boys?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Just these days, it's the travel. I'm not the travel. It's getting there.
Right.
Going to the building, I just it's my 58th birthday. No need to put me over, but I'm not a big birthday person. But I say that not to get birthday wishes, but I say that because, when I was young and I was running hard, I used to always think, when I'm 58, I'll still be young and running hard. And it's not as easy as you think.
Right.
Age gets the best of you. And it's a long process now to get to check in for a plane and go through security and get on a plane and get to the gate and get your bags. And I'm not bitching, man. I'm blessed to have done it. And given the opportunity, hey, I'm going up this weekend to New York City to do a virtual signing. So not to say I won't do it, just to say it's not something that I desire, but I certainly enjoy the times that I've had with so many people over 30 years, driving in cars and sitting in catering and just shooting the shit, man.
Yeah. I think I've always said, and I'd like to get your take on this, I kind of always said to fans that talk about, what's it like, the grind, or the opposite, where they kind of think that it's glamorous. They think we kind of travel like rock stars as pro wrestlers and we're on the road and it's like this glamorous lifestyle, which it absolutely is not. I often tell people, it's like, I'm not getting paid for what I do in the ring, or the interviews, or like that, going out in front of a crowd and getting this pop. Like, that's not what they're paying me for. They're paying for me what you just said, checking the bag, getting on the airplane, waiting for a connection flight that then gets canceled, and then you stay overnight, and like all that pain of the grind is the travel, getting to the building. That's what they're paying me for. Because then once you get to the building, you're doing the actual job. The job's awesome. It's like, it's not even work. I constantly pinch myself. I get paid to do this. But then when I'm on that plane or on that connection and my back hurts and I'm waiting for my bag and they lose the bag, it's like, okay, yeah, this is what they're paying me for.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad when I was in the groove in WCW. There were, before 9/11, obviously, there was no TSA. And I had built up status where my tickets automatically got upgraded to first class. So there's a lot of perks that go with that, VIP check-in and, for early boarding and going to the Delta Crown room is what they called it at the time. So that wasn't as bad, but hey, life has gotten a lot more complicated in a lot of different ways, not necessarily bad ways, but it requires a little bit more patience, which is, and I don't have much of.
Well, it's interesting you say you're talking about kind of this life before 9/11, which some of our listeners, they don't even remember that. Like they can't even imagine a life with no TSA or none of that stuff. But you know, I was reminded of that as I was reading through your book, which I want to talk about here today, Sitting Ringside Volume 1. It's by David Penzer along with Guy Evans. Maybe before we jump into the content of the book, because this is going to be the first time, Penzer, that I've had a conversation or done an interview. I like to call these conversations. This isn't an interview. It's more of a conversation, but
for sure.
In the conversations I've had with people, I haven't done one where I actually pull out quotes from the book and have specific questions that I want to ask somebody. So this is going to be new for me today, but I'm excited about it because I've very much enjoyed the book. So I want people to know where they can get the book and also like how it kind of came to fruition. So, but before we talk about how it even came to be, if people, I know they're going to get to the end of this conversation and okay, I want to read Sitting Ringside. Let's tell them right now before we even jump in, like how they can do that. How do they get this book? Where do they go? Let's start with a plug right off the hop here, Penzer.
All right, you could go to Amazon.com. Obviously, you could buy everything on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
But you could also go to davidpenzerbook.com, all one word, David Penzer Book. There's all kinds of cool bundles. When we get into how the book was created, I'll get into some of the really unique and rare, never before seen formats and internal memos from WCW, a lot of how the sausage is made, which people always love to hear about things they're interested in and see. So if you want to look at some of the bundles that where you get additional materials, you could go to davidpenzerbook.com.
Sweet. I'll put that link in the show notes. So for my audio listeners, you don't even have to type it in. I'll do one better. I'll type it in for you. You just go to the show notes, click on the link, and you can go straight to David Penzer Book and get those bundles. So I'm familiar with Guy Evans, and some of our listeners might be as well, because I read his WCW Nitro book, and it was fascinating. Like the amount of research that he did. I've also read Bischoff's book, Grateful, that he's done along with Guy Evans. So I'm familiar with his work. How did you kind of get hooked up with Guy Evans, and did this book idea kind of come to fruition?
So we had talked a couple of times for the Nitro book. I think I was quoted a few times in that book. What a great book, man. You were so much stuff that I learned. So much stuff that I learned reading that book, but especially what killed WCW is funny. Coming up in about a week or so, we got a docu-series on what killed WCW. You want to find out? I'm not saying don't watch it, because I'm sure you're going to get a ton of information, but the answers basically lies in Guy Evans' book, and it's not it's not any particular wrestler or angle or booker.
Right.
But how the book came about, as I mentioned, I was cleaning out my desk about a year and a half ago, and I came across a file folder with all these old, never before seen, super rare formats, internal memos, that I had kept from WCW. And, for instance, the last Nitro format, which boggles my mind, it's never come out, but it's in the book. Wow. You get to, like I said, you get to see how the sausage is made. It's also cool because it sort of shows you the evolution of the formats. The format I have from 1992 is one page, basically, where you have 1, Bobby Eaton versus blank, 2, the Road Warriors versus blank and blank. And, there was no production notes. There was no show notes. There was no finishes, who was going over times. It was basically just, Jody Hamilton, the masked assassin who booked the enhancement talent, who's key to my story. He would write in the names of the enhancement guys he thought that would have good matches with the talent. And that's kind of how it done. And then you fast forward down, to some of the later formats, and instead of 1 page, you got 25 pages for a 2-hour show with all kinds of details and production notes and interview notes and stuff like that. So it's really kind of cool. Anyway, so I wanted to find a way to get that out and maybe monetize it a little bit. I had no idea what to do. I took a picture of one of the Saturday night formats from the 90s, and I put it on Twitter, and I said, any idea, would anybody be interested in this kind of stuff? I have 200 pages of it. And, people started writing and stuff, and Guy PM'd me, and he said, call me tomorrow. So I called him, and he goes, we need to do a scrapbook. And that's how it started. I never had any intention of doing an autobiography. But we started talking and I would tell him stories about the guys and the formats and eventually he started, digging into how I got into the business and stuff. And about 3 months into the project, he said to me, we're not doing a scrapbook. We're doing a format. We're doing an autobiography. And I said, well, I hope the format is still going to be there. He goes, oh, no, they'll still be there, but we're going to do an autobiography. And I said, well, why? He goes, you don't understand. And I'm quoting him, not putting myself over. He said, you don't understand. Your story is fascinating. He said, the way you got in the business, and it's a rare view from a outside party who's not a wrestler who got to experience a crazy ride in the wrestling industry. And so I said, all right, well, it's a good thing you're a good writer because you could make my story exciting. And he did. And so here we are. And I'm thrilled about it. It was funny. I tell people I never really saw the final product until towards the end. I adjusted a couple of things, but he would send me a chapter a night. This was about a month, 6 weeks before it went to publishing. And 3 or 4 chapters in, I looked at my wife and I said, it's my story and I can't wait to hear what comes next. because Guy is so good with that. And so I all the praise goes to him. He's made my story an interesting journey about an interesting period of the wrestling business, that will live forever.
Yeah. So that's cool, Penzer, because one of the things that I was excited about talking to you on the show is, the concept of this podcast is wrestling is life is wrestling, where I connect, the adventures of the people I talk to, their adventure in wrestling. I connect it to life lessons and stories within their journey. And I have not had a ring announcer on the show. I've had one referee on the show. I've had one producer. I had David Sahadi on here, and those were praised episodes from my listeners because they were very interested in not just getting a wrestler's perspective, but like this different perspective of somebody else. Because one of the number one things I get asked from wrestling fans, when I'm doing, whether it's a con that I'm doing a convention, or just at the table when I'm doing an indie show, or a fan when they ask me something on Twitter, is they really want to know how can they get into the wrestling business. And oftentimes they're not looking to get into the business as a wrestler. They want to just get involved in the business in some other capacity, which is really hard to do. And in 2024, that's hard to do. It was exponentially harder back in the day when you got in, because it was even more of a closed business, right? With kayfabe, and like they were very, I'm speaking to the choir here, but they were very conscious of like who they were going to allow in. So that was one thing that I really found fascinating in your story, is how you were able to get involved in the business, especially at the time that you got in. And I think that's something that I think readers need. One thing, they got to go buy this book and read it, because I don't want to say one of one, but you're one of very few in the business that weren't in ring, weren't a manager, weren't a referee, but you were able to get into the business, get involved during a hot period, but really kind of get involved in a very fascinating, pull up your bootstraps kind of way, a mixture of hard work and luck, which I think is kind of a key to a lot of people's success, is hard work / luck or circumstance. So just without giving away too much from the book, but like, how did that initial process of you even just getting involved in the business, how did that happen? Because there's people that ask me all the time, how do I get involved in wrestling? Well, how did David Penzer get involved in professional wrestling?
Well, I had a little bit of an in, and you capture it so correctly, as far as, the way the wrestling business was back in the 1990s when I started. If you, like you said, if you weren't a wrestler, a referee, or a manager, or part of the front office, you just didn't get backstage in the dressing room. And a lot of time, if you were in the front office, you didn't go backstage. You would sit out, in the productions area. And so It was very, I mean, even like, now, like, cameramen and production people go backstage and we become friendly with them. That really didn't happen. They were set up in a different room, and one of my jobs back in the day in WCW was fetching the guys for interviews or for anything they needed to tape for production. You just didn't go in the back. And,
Right.
I call my journey an improbable, impossible journey, and you nailed it, man. A lot of hard work, but a lot of luck and circumstance. And I had a little bit of aid in as far as my first little journey into a company that was called Global Wrestling Alliance in the late '80s. It was run by a guy named Dr. Red Roberts. He did a wrestling gimmick as a heel psychologist, but he also was a shoot psychologist. So my dad was a very well-known psychologist in the Fort Lauderdale area where they were set up. And one of his colleagues knew the wrestling guy. So, he said, hey, my doc, do you know who Dr. Penzer is? Dr. Ed Roberts said yes. Well, his son's really into the wrestling business. He's a mobile DJ, could talk on a mic. He could help out. It's out of professional courtesy. Dr. Ed Roberts said, "We'll send him to our TV taping." They were taping at the Diplomat, so I didn't even go in the dressing room then. He just told me to hang out around the go position. Nothing really came of it. But they had an office that was like right around the corner from my house at the time, and it was like part office and part school. And Larry Malenko was in charge of the school, the great Malenko, and a guy named Bob Roop was the booker, and Norman Smiley and Gangrel, Dave Heath were two of the guys that started their wrestling journey at that school. And so I just started, I call it stooging around. And when I say stooging, I still think a good lesson, if you're trying to break in the business is, act like you belong there, even if you don't.
We're going to take a pause from this conversation to do another review. It's review time. We are going to review some supplements from ceofit.ca, and the supplement I'm going to be reviewing today is Shroom Boom. Mushrooms You Can Feel by Ballistic Supplements. It's 90 capsules. You hear that? 90 capsules. And this stuff is for natural energy and focus. Now, I've talked about supplements at ceofit.ca that help you build muscle. Well, this is a supplement that's going to help you build your brain. I've been taking Shroom Boom for about the last week, and let me tell you, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling great. Now, I'm taking a couple supplements from ceofit.ca, so it's hard to say which one's doing the work, but I know that when I'm hitting my workouts, I'm feeling good. So that's probably the supplements that I'm taking for the muscles. And I wake up in the morning, I take a couple capsules of the Shroom Boom, and let me tell you, they are mushrooms that you can feel. Now, the only negative thing, because I'm not just going to put things over and tell you how awesome they are all the time. I will put some cons to this. This stuff is strong in the sense that I can tell that these ingredients, it says on the side that they're vegan ingredients and they're extracted, all extracted from natural ingredients. Well, yeah, I can tell because these things stink. They're capsules, all right. However, the ingredients are so strong in it. I put it in my weekly little capsule pill thing to organize all the supplements I'm taking. And when I open that little compartment, I am overcome with the smell of mushrooms. So yes, these things, they stink, and they make the other pills in my capsules stink too. So the only thing that I can say that are negative about them is they stink. But however, the thing about that is I know that they're real. I know that they're legit. And some of the ingredients in here are just badass. Like they have 6 grams of lion's mane. I don't know what lion's mane is or what it's doing or why it's good, but it's lion's mane. I'm putting it in my body and I'm feeling good. So if you want to feel good, why don't you get yourself some Shroom Boom? Yeah, the pill might stink, but man, it's going to help your brain feel better. It's not going to make you stink. I promise. You will not stink. You will just be smarter. You will be more alert. You will be more focused, and you will have all natural energy from Shroom Boom, available right now at ceofit.ca. Where do you get your Shroom Boom? ceofit.ca.
You know,
Right.
I wasn't going around asking for autographs. I wasn't trying to find out, if wrestling was real or fake, or how it was done, or how is this move done. I was just taking it all in. At the same time, hell, hey, anybody need a cup of coffee? Anybody, I'm happy to go run, and get a pizza. So just, in that situation, in an indie, kind of an indie company where it's a very small crew, a guy who's not being a pest, who's willing to go get pizza and take out the trash at the end of the night, we'll keep him around. Why not? Eventually that led to, and what I've found is if you hang around long enough and you don't pester anybody, they start wondering what the hell you're doing there. So like Larry Malenko, like after like a month, Larry Malenko called me in his office and he said, sit down. I didn't know what was going to happen. And he said, what are you doing here? not in a rude way, but just that I remember in WCW after a while, Tracy Smothers was the first one to ask me the same thing. And so Larry Malenko asked me, and I said, well, I just love the business. And my dad is, in the same business as Dr. Red Roberts. And I'm just here to do anything I can to put up posters, to do anything I can to help this company be successful and maybe get my foot in the door down the road, because I could talk on a microphone and I'd love to ring announce. Mm-hmm. And, you could see him kind of exhale and go back in his chair. And he was like, all right. And then he started like giving me advice on ring announcing and ask, and we started talking about the business. And then Bob Roop and I, and they almost at that point, it's really weird because if I'd have gone into Bob Roop's office at the very beginning and said, tell me about the business, he'd have kicked me out of the building. There's not a doubt in my mind. Right. But after a while, when you've been there for a while and they see that you're not like asking questions, they almost want to talk.
Sure.
It's really strange. So that's how it started. And the same thing sort of happened in WCW, and Bob passed me off to Jody Hamilton. Thank God. That one was even a bigger stretch, because here, this is a national company, they don't really need a stooge, although I did do a lot of things for them. And I'm not saying you need to be a stooge to get in the wrestling business, but if there's anything you could do, to help out, it's always appreciated. But like I said, after, I didn't even hang out with I was in the backstage in the dressing rooms, but I didn't even hang out like with the talent. I would hang out with the enhancement guys I'd drive up with, and I'd be very respectful because I'd be handing out, people had to sign the sign-in sheet in order to get paid. And so I'd be very respectful, but, not like, not like marking out. And trust me, I was marking out. That was the hard part.
I bet. Yeah.
There was a time where I had to get Andre the Giant, who was at the anniversary of wrestling on TBS at Center Stage.
Yeah.
And I had to get him to sign a sheet. And he was in his Princess Bride outfit. It was right, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah. So, and there's a famous picture that Gary Michael Capetta had taken with Bruno Sammartino and Andre the Giant at the bar. And I was literally like 5 feet away from that picture. And there's so much of me that wanted to say, will you get one of me and Andre? But I just didn't do it. And now the cool thing is now it's cool. I looked yesterday, I saw on Twitter, it was, I think 18 years since Macho Man passed away. And I thought to myself, man, I don't have a picture with Randy Savage. Some guys I was able to get pictures with, but I never got one with Savage. There's so many wrestlers, that I never got pictures with. So, so now, people encourage that, and that's great. That's a wonderful thing, and I try to take as many pictures as I can.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
But back then, if I'd asked to take a picture with Andre, I'd have been out there with the fans, paying to get in, and somehow, I don't know how, somehow I figured out without even thinking about it how to approach the situation. I look back and because I've been talking a lot about this, and I look back and I say, how did I know all this? And I really didn't. I think it's just intuition. You're going into somebody's private office in a very private business. And I think it was just intuition to shut the F up and try to be as helpful and as you can without being a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, man, there's so much I could pull out of what you just said, Penzer. You said so many, I think, valuable things that could help somebody that, was wondering about how to get in. A couple things stood out to me, Penzer. I mean, one is, you said it kind of in passing. You're like, oh, I'd be willing to go get a pizza or go pick something up. One thing I tell young guys is, no matter what stage of your career at, make yourself valuable. So sometimes that's if you have a big online presence and you're really good at video editing, well, I mean, you're valuable that you can promote a show by making a really cool video and putting it out online. That's one way of adding value. But if you're just starting out in the business, I'm like, hey, go set up chairs, help set up a ring, go get pizza for the boys. That's valuable, because if you don't do it, somebody has to do it. And that's saving somebody else time for you to go out and do that. So you're adding value. If that's the only thing that you can do to add value, do it. And you were doing that just in intuition, right?
Not to go behind the scenes, but in TNA, and Impact, there was a crew in every city, and a lot of them traveled.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they got paid or not, and it's none of my business, but, they would help set up the ring. They would run errands. They would, set up chairs. Even the referees, would do that. So,
yes,
that's how, but they were there. They were looking at how the sausage was made. They were getting to overhear, guys talking about the business. They were able to hear stories, and that's just, eventually I got to know some of them, on a name by name basis and become, friendly with them.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of them asked for my advice on things, and I would happily give it to them. But yeah, it's a perfect example. Just, I say there's a fine line between being a stooge and being a kiss ass.
Right.
I'm not saying I'd never cross that line, but you don't really have to, especially in 2024 anymore. But at the end of the day, it's about making money. At the end of the day, the bottom line is about making money and being successful. And if somebody is adding to the value of your company and by being, help putting up the ring and, help running errands, that's valuable. And, people will remember that. And, there's been, Johnny B. Bad, Mark Merrill started as an enhancement talent, and Dusty Rhodes looked at him and said, you look just like Little Richard, as the entrance music goes. And, he became a star from it. And so, anything could happen.
That's right.
But nothing can happen if you're not there, if you're not present.
Yes. Well, that's another thing I wanted to, that was the second thing. I'm glad you said that, because that's the second thing that stood out to me, is the simple concept of just showing up. And I know where you got that mindset and that initiative from, because I read your book, and you clearly got that from your dad, who is in your book you learn as the reader that how important your father was as your mentor and as someone that helped you with so many different things. But I want to actually read a quote right now from your book that is from your father. You say in the book that your dad was truly your hero, and this is something that your father wrote. And your father said, "Success in life is not complicated," he once wrote, "but it demands effort and discipline, whether it be school, work, a significant relationship, playing a sport, or taking up a hobby. It demands showing up, taking action, and trying your very best." That sums it up right there, Penzer. Success in life, it's not complicated. But you got to show up.
Yeah, if you're not there, if you're not there, you don't have a chance. If you show up, at least you got a shot. Now it may be a long shot, and trust me, mine were long shots.
Right.
How it all worked out is one for the ages. But and I'm so lucky that it did. But if you don't show up, if you're not there, and like I never missed a Nitro, I never missed a Thunder. I didn't even miss a TV taping until COVID kicked my ass back. I don't know if you remember.
Oh wow!
I missed
Yes.
Hollywood. Down in Hollywood, Florida, we had an Impact taping, and I missed it. And I think
yes, I do remember that. Yeah,
that's the first television taping I missed in 30 years. And
really,
yeah.
Man, that must have killed you, because I know when I remember when I missed something, it bugged me the first time I had to miss a show.
I wasn't happy about it, but I felt like such crap. It was like I just couldn't have made it. Sure. Even the next one that I made a couple weeks later, and I was like getting lightheaded, and I remember they call him Big Bill now.
Yes, Big Cass. He was Big Cass.
Yeah,
and he was Bill. Yep.
Like in the airport, he saw me struggling, and he helped me with my bag and stuff, because I was even getting dizzy and So it kicked the hell out of me for about 6-8 weeks, but that's the first one I missed. So it's funny. I'm reading a book now for work. I'm a realtor, called The 12-Week Year. It's called The 12-Week Year, and it's a unique book. And I realized that that's what I did in the wrestling business. I made it a 12-week year, and this is like 2 days ago. I was reading this book, and I'm like, this is me. This is my story. So, it really has nothing to do with the wrestling business. It has more to do with as a salesperson. But it's about
all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah, about how you prioritize things, and you don't say, the whole concept behind the book is you don't say in March, if things are slow, well, I still got October, November, December, January. If you have a 12-week year, then it puts more necessity on getting up and working your butt off every day, because you don't have 12 months anymore. You have 12 weeks.
Interesting.
Anyway, it's interesting, but anyway, my dad was my hero. Unfortunately, I lost him about 18 months ago. He had suffered a lot, so it was good to see him have some peace. But I go into a lot in the book about my journey to this day with anxiety and panic attacks. And it's something that I'm proud to talk about, not because I'm glad I have it, but because so many other people deal with mental health issues and don't have my father there to guide them through and tell them it's going to be okay when you think it's not going to be okay. He really helped me. And I had an anxiety attack last night. I found a way to push through it after 40 years. Right. But it is what it is.
Yeah, you do. You talk about that a couple of times. That was one thing that I'd highlighted in the book. You at the peak of WCW, you were hanging and banging and hitting the road. And you say in the book that, if you would have had back when you were dealing with it in 2024, if it was 2024, you could just go to Turner HR and say, hey, I'm having some mental health issues. And, they could find a backup for you, or they could find help, but you had no backup, number one. And it's a different time, a time when you don't really talk about your issues or definitely mental health. It wasn't a thing. So your dad was there to be your guide and to talk you down on so many different occasions. And you say in the book that you would be able to call him and he would say things like, this too shall pass. And you even wrote that your dad said, David, you don't have to throw away what you've worked so hard for. And he was able to help you through those times as your mentor. And that's come up a lot with my conversations with people for this podcast, just how important it is to have a mentor or a guide, someone to help you in those tough times. And it's, for me, I found it really, I don't even know what the right word is, Penzer, I guess, just touching or endearing that your dad was that for you. My dad wasn't like that for me. I found mentorship in other ways and through trainers and other people. But man, that's really awesome that your dad was there for you throughout your career. I find that like so important and touching. He was able to help you through those times.
Yeah, the only thing I wish is that he wrote 6 books in his life, and the only thing I wish is that he could have read mine.
Yeah,
but
I think he'd be proud, man.
I think he would be. I know he'd be proud.
Yes.
And I'd love to rib him on the fact that I've sold more in a month than he sold in 6 books in his life.
Oh, that's great.
I'll never forget before you could go on Amazon and they print, when you buy a copy, they print it on the spot.
Right.
So I'll never forget growing up, we had boxes and boxes and boxes of his books in there because you had to order a minimum.
Right.
He would sell some to patients or sell some, there was no internet. He just wanted to have a book. He just wanted to have a book with his name that he could hand to somebody and say, here, read this, even if you don't have to pay me for it. Read this. I hope it helps you. Because that's what his life was helping people. We had a celebration of life for him, and we had people, we said, does anyone want to come up and speak? And, usually you say that maybe 1 or 2 people speak. And 2.5 hours later, there were still people talking. It blew us away. People that were friends of ours that we didn't even know interacted with him, that had reached out on the side to get advice and stuff that he never told us, that came up to the mic and said, you guys didn't know this, but he helped me this really bad period of my life. And, and we were like blown away, but
special.
Great guy. And Dad, if you're up there, I sold more books, so kiss my ass.
Oh, I love it. Well, you said earlier too, you kind of, again, just kind of something in passing, like, part of showing up and kind of taking initiative, kind of shooting your shot and seeing what happens. And I think that's one thing in your story that I think is really important to highlight. And I don't think enough people kind of highlight those things in people's lives, because I say that again, when people ask for advice, I'm like, well, you gotta take initiative in certain things. And you did this many times in your career, like as far back as you mentioned Bob Roop earlier, where, this GWA situation and Bob Roop and the company was, things were going on in the company, and you decided to shoot your shot, and you write in your book that you went up to him and said, Bob, do you want to buy a ring and promote indie shows together? And you took the initiative, and that led to you kind of getting your foot in the door more ways in the business. Like, you just took the initiative, took a chance, and it worked out. And
yeah, it was actually the Global Wrestling Alliance ring we bought because they went out of business. And I don't, and I don't want to sound, I appreciate the praise, and I really love that you enjoyed the book. That means more than on a personal level. But I don't want people to think that this story is about putting myself over for all these things I accomplished. I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I was just faking it until I made it. I didn't sit there and plan and say, okay, this is going to be my strategy. In hindsight, it looked like a hell of a strategy, and I hope it'll help other people. But at the time, I was just trying to get to the next day. Right. There was never any guarantees. I've never one time in my 30-year career had a contract in this business, which is kind of annoying. I was an employee for Turner. I got a lot of benefits from that, but I never had a contract. For Impact and TNA and stuff, I've always been on a handshake agreement. So there's never been anything guaranteed for me.
Right.
So, you just got to keep showing up. And if it's funny. I used to joke with Gail, I used to, when I got my airplane information for the next taping, for years, for years in Impact Wrestling, I would write, and I'm superstitious, so I'd write it every time, made another one. I'd write back on the email, made another one. And right. I'm so superstitious. I didn't even get like a hotel frequent flyer deal. And I look back and say, all these rooms that we stayed at the same hotel, guest points. And I could be taking my wife to, to somewhere for a week in a penthouse hotel. But I didn't want to, I thought that as soon as I got that it wouldn't work out. So I'm just always been very superstitious, and I never take anything for granted. There's no guarantee they're going to call you back and say, come back next week or come back again. And
I don't want listeners to, I like that you say that, Penzer, because one of the things that I've learned in my life, Penzer, is that everybody has a story. And if we just stop and listen to other people's stories, we can learn so much from them. So part of the thing, like, that's what I want. I'm just kind of expressing to you all the things that I've learned. And I think other people can learn from your story, even though this book is not written as a lesson book. It's not written as, oh, hey, look at me, look at all the things I've done, putting myself over. No, it's not that at all. But I'm kind of I'm doing that for you right now. And I'm going to continue to do that as we continue to talk, because I'm letting you know, like, these things that I'm learning from your story, because I think that's true for anybody. I enjoyed talking to literally anybody. It could be somebody on the street. It could be whether it was my grandma or my grandpa. I just love listening to their stories and the things I could learn just from their life, even though they're not trying to teach me something. But I don't think we do that enough in life. Just listen to people and their stories. And if we do, man, there's so much that we can glean from it and apply to ourselves that can be helpful. And I'm letting you know that there's things that I'm reading in here that's the case. Like, and I can relate to as well, because exactly what you're saying, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I've been in this business now. It's crazy when I even think about it. I've been in the wrestling business 25 years, Penzer.
Wow.
But I've never felt it, just like you, I've never felt secure in it at all. I've never felt like tomorrow's guaranteed. I've kind of always felt like you write in the book, how do I keep this going? How do I keep this dream alive? And you say in the book you wrote, I did everything with an unrelenting attitude. You got to keep showing up, Penzer. I thought you got to do your job. You got to work hard. You got to do extra shit. Help out in production. Just do anything to keep this dream alive. I can relate to that so much, Penzer, in that, like, I got to figure out what can I do. I just got to keep showing up, learn as much from this business as I can. I want to learn as much as I can, make myself useful in different ways. Like, that was the attitude that I had when I decided that I wanted to be a producer and help with agenting, because I knew this in ring, I'm only going to have so much time in the ring. I love this business. I want to be in it. Maybe I can help and do some production. And then that happened, and I'm doing that, and it's adding value, both to me as a talent, but also I'm learning more things in the business, because I know tomorrow's not guaranteed. You're not saying that in the book, like, this is all the things that I've learned and I'm going to pass this knowledge on. However, for someone like me, and I think the readers, if they just take it that way, it is super helpful, Penzer. Like, there's a lot of lessons in here, and that being one of them. Like you just said, that tomorrow's not guaranteed. And I think that's an important lesson for not just people in the wrestling business, but for any business or any aspect in life. I think that's an important lesson.
For sure. And yeah, time to put you over. I've seen it, over 4 years or so, reinvent yourself.
That's going to do it for another week of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Diener, and part 1 with David Penzer. There's a cliffhanger for you. What's David Penzer going to be putting me over with next week? Well, you got to come back for part 2, and we'll continue this insightful conversation of the wild and wacky life and journey that David Penzer has had in the professional wrestling business. If you don't want to wait till next week, you want to listen to part 2 right now, well, you can, because the full conversation is up early and ad-free right now over at patreon.com/Cody Diener. Why don't you sign up for a free trial, and you can get the entire episode with David Penzer, as well as full raw video and audio of all my past guests and bonus stories with each and every guest that I've had on the show. Where do you get that right now? You can get it on patreon.com/Cody Cody Diener. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, why don't you take a screenshot of yourself listening to this, upload it to your socials, tag me at Cody Diener, and I will make sure that I share that with the world and share the love that you have for this show and this project that I'm doing, where I'm trying to share not just my love of professional wrestling, but teach some life lessons along the way of these crazy characters that I've met in my journey. One of those characters is David Penzer, and we'll be back again next week to continue this conversation with him and this book that he has written, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1, that can be picked up at davidpenzerbook.com. I said at the beginning of today's episode that I've been busy traveling up and down the road. This past weekend, I was in Collingwood, Ontario with Rock Solid Wrestling, a wicked awesome show, fighting alongside Eric Young and Crazy Steve, a fellow Rest When Dead athlete. And we're going to have some more wicked awesome shows coming up this weekend. So if you want to know where you can see me upcoming, well, if you're listening to this when this episode drops, you can see me this weekend in Niagara Falls for Neo Wrestling in Niagara Falls. Go to goneopro.ca. Check them out, Go Neo Pro, on all their social media. And I'm going to be in the #1 contendership match for the Neo Grand Independent Championship. You want to see if I win that? Well, why don't you get your tickets right now? goneopro.ca. Learn more about the company that I started with. I've got history in Neo Spirit Pro Wrestling. I started there, 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago, but also seems like it was just yesterday. If you want to see me on television, well, you can watch me on TNA Wrestling, and better yet, why don't you watch TNA Wrestling Live coming up on June 14th and 15th. I will be in Chicago for Against All Odds on the 14th, and then a television taping on the 15th. That's in Chicago. For more information on that, go to tnawrestling.com. The following weekend on June 22nd, I will be back in Hamilton, Ontario for Top Tier Wrestling, defending my Steel City Championship. And then the following weekend, I'll be back with TNA Wrestling in Philly at the EC Dub Arena in Philly, the 2300 Arena, for 2 nights, 28th, 29th of June, filming for TNA Wrestling. Again, more information there at tnawrestling.com. Then at the beginning of July, let me just plug some more wicked, awesome, rock solid wrestling. Every single year in the first week of July, on the Thursday, as part of the Italian Festival in Sudbury, Ontario, Rock Solid Wrestling puts on a show. I will be back on July 4th. It's a Thursday night in Sudbury, Ontario, for some rock solid wrestling. It's going to be sweet. It's going to be wicked. Every single year, it just gets bigger and better. So why don't you join us on July 4th in Sudbury, Ontario? And then for the summer schedule I got coming up, well, it's going to be starting off there with the July there in Rock Solid Wrestling. And then just a few days later, I will be returning to the Essex Fun Fest for Border City Wrestling in Essex, Ontario. Essex Fun Fest. Guys, it is aptly named. Every single year, it's all about fun. They have an entire festival dedicated to it right there in Essex. It'll be hot. The sun will be shining, and I'll be punching somebody in the face and getting a bunch of kids to follow me around the ring and go absolutely insane and chant DDT for at least 30 minutes. And I'll beat somebody up. I'll sell some merch. I'll have some fun with all the families that are there in Essex. I do that every year at Border City Wrestling for the Essex Fun Fest. If you want to learn more about that, it's July 7th. Why don't you check out Border City Wrestling on all social media, and they'll let you know how you can join us at the Essex Fun Fest on July 7th. Then the schedule just continues to get crazy all throughout July, but I'm not going to go through my whole schedule. We'll be here all day. But if you want to see me live, please do. If you want to bring me to your event, I still have some dates available this summer. Don't tell my wife that I said that. We're trying to plan some fun family things, and we are, but this is my job, guys. I'm a professional wrestler, so I do have a few dates that, I'm not going to let that interfere with the family stuff that I have with my 4 kids and my beautiful wife. But around the things that I'm doing this summer with my family, there's a couple dates left. If you want to book me on your show, go to bookcody@codydiener.com. That's bookcody@codydiener.com, and you can book me for your wrestling event. I do seminars, I do training workshops, and I also do autograph signings and appearances as well. So getting in the ring, sharing my love of wrestling with your fans. If you are a principal, an administrator, a teacher, or you know any of the above that I just mentioned, and you would like to bring me to your school to share my story and the lessons I've learned along the way, I'm a professional speaker. It's one of the things that I do. I travel all across the nation, going into elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, sharing my story. And this fall, my schedule will get amped up. I already have schools booking me for the fall season. When they come back to school, they want to start off the school year in an inspiring and motivating way. And they bring me to their school to do an assembly presentation and get the students hyped and looking forward to the school year ahead. If that's something you'd be interested in bringing me to your school for, why don't you head over to chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, chrisgrayspeaks.com. You can see some speaking reels. You can see the topics that I speak about and some testimonials from some satisfied clients that I've had all across North America. And there's a booking page there. If you want to ask me some questions, let me know how I can be of service to your students in your community. That's chrisgrayspeaks.com. Whew, I'm a busy dude. I'm going to keep bringing you this wicked awesome content here because I know that all the life lessons that I've learned in my journey as a professional wrestler, I can pass them along to you and they can help you, whether you're in the business or not. Just in life in general, there's so many lessons that we can learn and take away from our guests. So I will see you next week with part 2 with our buddy David Penzer. And when we sit down for part 2 with Penzer, we're again going to learn the same thing that we learn every week on this show, and that's that wrestling is life, is wrestling. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life, is wrestling.